That which we sense as consciousness within ourselves emanates from the source of all life, He who we call God. So you are an emanation of God. Go back to the source. Conscious connection with the source. So the consciousness that pervades the universe, that is the universe, is focalized through this particular form, this consciousness that you can know in yourself, consciously as a presence. And you don't have it, you are it. You do not have consciousness, you are consciousness. Now, if the brain is just a transformer of consciousness or a receiver of consciousness or a channeler of consciousness, where does consciousness come from? From where does it emanate? It does not exist in this dimension. This dimension is a physical one, filled with physical objects and sensation. But underneath the physical begins that which is no longer part of the physical. Even your thoughts are not part of the physical. They exist in another dimension, a dimension below the surface of physical things. How do we know this, one would ask? Because we cannot find a thought in the physical realm. One can open their brain to look for thought and would not find them, because we do not know what a thought is or where thought lives. Where does thought live in you? Does every atom represent a thought? Do some molecules represent what happened to you on one day, a memory? Where does memory live? Emotions are definitely closer to the physical realm, but further down we head into the unseen. In other words, consciousness is not of this dimension, it is of the transcendent dimension. The consciousness that you are emanates from another dimension and comes into this form, and an awakening happens. And this is my realization. Consciousness emanates from the source of all life, and He does not exist in this realm. Consciousness is the emanation of God. In the same way that light is the emanation of the sun, consciousness is the emanation of God into this dimension. And it seems that gradually the emanation of God into this dimension that is consciousness increases. You can see it in yourself, how gradually you grow in consciousness, and you are only a microcosm of the macrocosm. Your own experience can tell you a lot about the universe. If you could understand yourself, you could understand the universe. And so consciousness itself exists in a timeless dimension. However, it emanates into this dimension that has time. And you experience this as an increase in consciousness, a growing awareness. A human being can become more conscious. The entire planet is becoming more conscious gradually. If you go back millions of years, you would notice that life was less conscious than it is now. It was less developed, less differentiated, less complex, less conscious. But gradually, the consciousness increased. We can say that the creation story is still going on. We cannot understand why this is happening. It simply is. But what we can know is what we sense in ourselves. That is the consciousness that emanates from the source of all life, which is God. So you are an emanation of God. This realization is sometimes called God realization, God in you. And the question arises, are you God? Well, the answer is yes and no. Consider this. A ray of sunlight is an intrinsic part of the sun. But if a ray of light could speak, and it said about itself, I am the sun, in one sense it is, but in another sense, no. The power of the sun is so infinite that a simple ray of light cannot compare itself to it. However, it is definitely a part. The essence of who you are is eternally connected to the essence of that which is the source of life. You are an emanation of that who is the One. It is a wonderful thing to realize that who you are intrinsically, where you belong, is there. And the essence of your being is a disconnected fragment from this universe. And when you realize this, a very powerful peace overcomes you, because you are conscious of your connection with the transcendent, that is God. And this sense of peace is always there in your life, in the background. The sense of a connectedness to God is the end of fear. Fear, anxiety, and all form of negative thought. Through transcendence, you realize your connectedness to the one self that you are an extension of. And for many people, transcendence does not occur until their very lives become very difficult and unbearable, when they experience all kinds of loss and limitation. For some people, only then can something happen. Suddenly, when the self becomes very unsatisfying and limiting and painful, then something opens up. Then the self gives way. But you do not have to wait for that. Many of you have already been through the pain and the experience of suffering